Hello and welcome to part 13 of the Mickey head tutorial set. This is David Ward. When last I left you, we had gone in and created the texture map for the eyeballs, got those all set up, and I mentioned that we could create a nice photosphere for the reflection of the eyes to kind of emulate the fact that he's in an environment and have reflections of that environment in his glossy eyes. So let's go ahead and do that. There's a quick way to do it here in Blender. It's real easy. Let me open up this other Blender file here. Oops, not that one. There we go. Had the wrong window selected. So this is an environment I was playing with. If you paid attention to the Oculus Rift thing I was playing with, this is the first environment I made, kind of just a beach house type of thing. And I went into cycles, because that's the only way you can do this. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, David Ward and cycles, oh, weird. Yeah, I don't hate cycles. I just prefer internal. Cycles is great for doing environments and like still shots of, whatever. But as far as characters and things that have hair and fur and things like that, aside from carpets and whatever, furniture, I prefer the internal because it's just faster. With an environment, you only need to do, if you're just doing a picture of an environment, you just do one big render and you're done. But if you got to animate it, cycles take so darn long. I prefer internal. It's a lot faster. But in any case, to make a photosphere in Blender, create your environment, get your camera set up, and then it's real easy. Then you just go to your camera settings, and actually the camera itself, I believe, there we go. Camera, yes. And instead of the, which would probably be perspective that you have default selected, use panoramic. And then you make sure the type is equirectangular. So what that does is it creates a 3D photosphere of your whole environment rather than just what you're looking through right there. That's just going to be the front image, the middle part of the image when it renders. So all you got to do, just take a look at the rendered version, and you can see that the cabinets that we were looking at are there in the middle, but then the rest of the room above us and below us is kind of wrapped around into this, flattened out into this 2D texture. So this will be handy for, like, if you're doing, like, just for such an occasion, you want to have an animation of your character in this environment, but you don't want to have to render this environment every single frame that you're animating the character. So you can just do this, do a nice high-resolution image, and just have that as a background image. Just kind of use that, use the compositor to put that in the background instead of an actual scene. So that render a lot faster once you get the initial one done. So in any case, this is the preview sample here in Cycles. So if I rendered it, it would render 60 samples. So I've already done that though. Let me pull that up real quick. Okay, here it is. We got the bungalow sphere image here. This is actually a 1080p, so if I say 100%, you can see it's a little bit better than that 1280, but all this graininess, you won't really be able to tell in the reflection. Now, if you're using this as an actual environment, you probably want to render it probably 2 or 3 times this size, just so you don't have any blurriness or, pixelation there in the background. Or, you could always just blur it and kind of cheat, blame it on the focus. The focus is on the guy, not the background, so the background's blurry. But in any case, we got that. Let's go ahead and jump back over to Mickey here, and let's add that texture there. Actually, I'm going to copy that image to, let's see, control. You can't see what I'm doing here, but I'm copying it from that folder, the bungalow folder, over into Mickey's reference folder. There we go. So now, if we go back to Mickey's lens, go to his textures. It doesn't have any on that particular material, but we're going to say new, image or movie. Image, we're going to open the reference, and it's going to be bungalow sphere. Okay, open that. As soon as that goes, it takes a while to open things for some reason. Let's turn on the preview, so go to both. And right now it's not set to anything, but if we go here and turn off transparency, we'll be able to see it a little better. Okay, so now it's reflecting that just as a standard straight image, but I want it to be, let's collapse that. The mapping is going to be reflection, and then instead of color on the influence, change that to mirror, and then also ray mirror. And then we want to turn it down. We don't want it to be a perfect mirror of that, since it's, just a subtle reflection in his eyes. Set both of those to 0.5, and then we'll go back to the materials and turn that shading back on, transparency back on. So now if we grab our camera and we zoom in real close on his eyes so we can see it a little better. This is also another thing. If you're doing a real close-up shot on his eyes or somewhere real close to his skin, you're going to need to change the subsurface scattering down a little bit more, because the closer you get, the more waxy it's going to look. So, okay, so you can kind of see some of the reflection of his nose here. Can't really see the environment too much that I can tell. Maybe if we turn off some of these lights so we're just relying on the outside reflections rather than lights. Let's move those to a new layer. I'm going to move them to this layer here. Let's actually move all the lights to that layer. And then and you know what? I like to keep all the non-scene objects to that layer, the very far right corner. Camera as well. That way I can just, if I'm in solid view, I can just play with things this here in this layer without everything being in the way. But let's go to that layer again, and let's take those first two lights. I know we just put them on this layer, but I'm going to go ahead and put them on that layer there. And shift select that layer, so we only have the one light now. So now if we do a render, might be able to see some reflections a little bit better. Okay, it's dumbed down a lot, but I think I can kind of see some of the cabinet settings in here. If we go ahead and turn that reflections all the way to 1, and 1, we'll be able to see it a lot better. But yeah, you can definitely see some of the cabinets and the edge of his nose there. Problem is you can't see through it. It's a perfect mirror. So he has mirrors for eyeballs instead of actually transparent lenses. So go ahead and set those back to about 0.5 and 0.5. And that'll work. So let's get our camera back to where it was. Did I move it to the other layer? I did. Let's move that back to that top layer. There we go. Let's go ahead and zoom him out again. Reposition. And okay, so we'll go ahead and save this. Part 13 here. And let's go and do one more render just to get an idea of what he's going to look like. Of course, we already have the idea. We've been looking at him for quite a while. But that reflection really helps those eyes pop. It really helps them look a lot more lifelike than just shiny spheres in there. Sorry, I had to get a sip of my coffee. Okay, so now, what you've all maybe been waiting for. Particle hair. Let's jump in there. We got a little bit of time left in this part, 12 minutes or so. Let's go ahead and give him some head hair. So we're going to make use of that scalp that we created way back. And we're going to go and grab him. And let's go to our data tab there. And go ahead and collapse everything except vertex groups. And we already have the scalp as a vertex group. So that's good to go. If you didn't have it, you could just tab into edit mode and select one of the vertices there on the scalp, Control L, and select the whole scalp, and then create a new vertex group, plus sign, name it scalp, and assign those to that. But we already did that a long time ago, so we don't have to do it now. So now we go over to the particle settings and create a new particle system. And we're going to call this one, sorry, I bumped the microphone. Sorry, I hope I didn't blow your ears out. Head hair, okay? And go ahead and name the particle settings there. Head hair, there we go. And the type is going to be hair. And you can see it goes out from all over his head. We don't want that. So before we do anything else, let's go down to our vertex groups and set the density to be from the scalp only. So now we have just his hair. It's got a big afro, so let's go ahead and style that a little bit better. Hair length right now is set to 4. Let's pop that down to about 0.5. That'll be a little bit better. Maybe a little bit smaller, even maybe 0.3. There we go. That'll be a little better. Then we can kind of sculpt it as we need to. Now, before we go any further, let's go ahead and set up a material for it. Let's go back to our material tab and hit the plus sign there. So we have another, let's go ahead and name that first material Micky material. I thought we already did that a long time ago, but I guess I overlooked it. So we'll go ahead and name that now. Go ahead and create a new one, and this is going to be Micky hair. Actually, let's go ahead and name this head hair because we're going to have a separate material for his eyelashes and eyebrows. So we say head hair, and we'll go to our texture settings and create a new one. And this one's going to be a blend. And what color should we make his hair? Let's make it a nice kind of a sandy blonde, maybe. So we're going to set the colors there on our ramp here to demonstrate that. So the first color, default, is black transparent. So let's set that alpha all the way to 1. And then change the color to kind of a brownish reddish tone, maybe about like so. And then it's going to fade out, sun bleached, to a nice blondish tone. Actually, I still have that same color selected, so let me undo that. The material ramp's a little bit ornery these days. It doesn't. Thought I selected that, but I didn't. But anyways, go ahead and fix that to a nice blondish, tannish color. About like so. And so the root of the hair particle is going to be this orangey, brownish color, and it's going to fade into the blondish, tannish color. So we set this to both, change that to the particle display. You can see right now it's the opposite of what we want, but if we collapse that and collapse that, go down to mapping, change the coordinates from UV to strand particle, you can see it goes the correct way now. So let's go ahead and name this one Micky, if I can spell it correctly. Microphone's in my elbow's way, I can't type normally. Micky hair color, okay. Go ahead and create another texture. This is going to actually control the transparency. So Micky hair trans, or just call it alpha. It's a little easier to spell alpha than it is transparency. So now this is also going to be a blend. And we'll go ahead and turn the color ramp on for this one as well. But this one we're going to change the white color also to black. But we're going to also change its alpha down to, let's put it down almost 100% transparent. We're going to say 0.1. And then the base of it, we're going to put about 0.5. Okay, so again, it didn't select the right one. That's frustrating. 0.5. Select the right one next time, Blender. Make me mad. Okay, 0.1. Good Lord Almighty. 0.5. Select it. There. It's like you have to be right on the tip of the point there for some reason. Anyways, show the alpha. So you can kind of see a dark to light blend there. So we'll go ahead and collapse all this. Go ahead and make sure that's strand particle. And you can't see anything now because it's going to the color and it's almost transparent. So basically all it did was make that a little darker. So I'm going to turn that off. Set that to the alpha. And you don't see anything now because we have to go back to the materials tab and then collapse that and tell it to turn transparency on. And then set this alpha all the way to 0 because we want the alpha to be controlled by that blend map. So now we have it's a little darker at the bottom, then it gradually fades out to the top. So that'll give us some nice, soft looking hair. And also what we can do to make it look a little more, so we can not have to put as many hair particles on there, we can change the strand settings. We want the tip to be 0 because it's going to be basically a very, very long, thin triangle. But the root, let's go ahead and bump that up to 2.5. And you can kind of see it kind of fades out. So now we'll go back to our particle settings and make sure our material slot is Micky head hair. So we're using that. And go ahead and turn on strand render and B-spline render. Now if you're not using the buffer shadows for your lamps, if you're using the ray trace shadows, you don't want to turn on B-spline. Or you don't want to turn on strand render because it doesn't throw shadows that well or at all with strand render. But if you turn it off, it'll throw shadows. However, it'll bog your scene down because it treats each one of those as a geometry rather than like a curve or a strand. So you turn that on, it renders a lot faster, and you can use the buffer shadows. So there we go. So now we'll go to our children settings. Right now there's no children, so it's just going to render all of these parent strands just by themselves. So if we go ahead and look through our camera, let's go ahead and adjust that so it's got the hair in there. So we'll do a quick render. Should have a nice afro, blondish, tannish color. Okay, so not bad. Each particle might need to be a little thinner than that 2.5 that I set it, but we can go ahead and give them some children now. Go back to the particle settings, and interpolated is the best way to go, I think. If you use the simple, it basically just copies it each strand around its parent and just kind of makes a circular copy of it, if that makes sense. Which will work, especially it'll work if we have a separate geometry that we're mapping it to. But later on, if we draw in the eyebrows and such, we definitely want to, well, yeah, we'd want to use that for that too. So basically, in this instance, you could use it for whatever we're doing. I'm going to use interpolated right now because I think it flows better and it's easier to control as long as you have a set vertex group that you're putting it on. But in any case, the eyebrows and eyelashes don't have vertex groups. They'll just be drawn on, but we'll get to that later. So anyways, we got our children set up. So right now it's displaying 10 for every parent strand, but it's going to render out 100. So that's going to render out quite a bit thicker than we see here. So I'm going to go ahead and bump that down to say 50, just so it's a little bit thicker. So if we look through our camera now, go ahead and render. Should have a nice bushy head of hair there. Okay, so that's not looking too bad. It doesn't really look like hair because we haven't styled it yet, but one thing that'll also make it look a little more natural is to change the randomness of the render strands here. So we'll set that all the way to 1. You can see it makes it so it's not, perfectly razored off. So this, even just this, you could still leave him with the afro, and it'll still look a lot better with that random length than it did before. So you can see it looks a lot more better. So say if you're wanting to do someone that actually has an afro and you don't want it to have that straight hair, what you can do is come down here to the kink and just say probably either curl or wave, but then set the frequency way down. And then the shape. Just play with these settings here. Maybe the curl will be the best option. You can just play with those, and the smaller you get it, you can see it starts looking a little more frizzy rather than just straight lines. So if we did a render there, you can see that looks quite a bit better if you're going to leave it in that style. But I'm not going to leave it in that style, so I'm going to turn the kink off to nothing. And let's jump in to our particle edit tab. So when you come in here, get my microphone cord out of my way there, you're just going to have your parent strand. So if you want to see all the children strands as well, you just go and turn on children, then you can kind of see what you're doing amongst everything. So we'll just turn those on, jump up here to the comb tool, and I'm just going to click and drag and just comb this around here. Now it's going to look kind of funny when we go to our side view because this is only painting, or it's only combing from the front. So let's get a little bit more style in here. Get a nice part if we can. Okay, so now like I said, when we go to it looks perfectly fine from the front, but when we go to the side, it didn't really keep the the nice looking shape. So we'll have to clean that up a little bit. Just click and drag gently here and there. And you just kind of rotate your scene around, kind of just comb. Okay, this can take a lot of practice. I've done a lot of practicing with this hair combing, so if it looks a little easier than it actually is, that's because practice makes perfect. I don't know about perfect, but practice makes it go a little faster. The more you do it, the better you get at it. I'm not saying I'm that great, but I think it's looking okay. Okay, so now right now all the hair is the exact same length. So it looks almost like a mullet because it looks longer in the back than in the front, even though it's the exact same length. But we can change that. We can fix it. Go to the length settings here in your brush tools and set it to shrink here. So we're going to make the back a little shorter. The sideburns a little shorter in here. And just get his ears lowered, as they call it when you get a haircut. So we'll kind of comb that back in. And if you get some problems like here where some of it's going through the surface of the head and it's going to result in a bald spot when we render it, you can change the distance that the particles can be combed up next to the head. Right now it's 0.25, so we change that to 0.5. You won't see anything change, but when you start combing, that's when it'll start popping out of the surface. So we'll give him a little bit of a feathery look there on the bottom. And then I want to make the top a little longer, so we'll go back to length, this time grow instead of shrink. So we'll just make the front area here, maybe here, and over here, a little bit longer. Okay, we'll comb this. Now, on my model of myself, I had to do the hair, I don't know, 3 or 4 times because I did the whole outside of the head before I did the teeth and gums and everything. And then when I added the teeth and gums, it changed the order of the vertices of the actual model, and then it ruined all my hair settings, so I had to redo them. So keep that in mind. Make sure you finish everything on the model that you're going to model onto it before you do the hair. Because once you start adding that extra geometry in, it likes to throw things off. Okay, so let's see what he's going to look like. Go back to object mode. You can kind of get an idea what the hair is going to look like there. Let's give him a quick test render, see how that's looking. Go ahead and F12. It would have been a good idea to go ahead and save this before I rendered out, because once you start messing with particles, Blender likes to to go crazy and haywire sometimes. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent, I guess. Looks like he has a really high forehead, so I'm going to comb some of that down over his head, so it kind of hides that high scalp up there. And then also the specular level of the hair is a little undesirable, so I'm going to fix that too. So let's escape out of there. I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick. Save there, and like I said, go ahead and comb some of that hair down. Go back to particle edit. Go and lengthen some of the bangs area. Grow that out a little bit more. Maybe on this side as well. A little bit. Then we'll comb it a little more over his face. And sometimes, like I just did there, I'm trying to comb on the front, but it's going through the head and grabbing the back as well. I don't want that, so I'm going to go ahead and choose just limit selection to visible, so that'll turn off that back area. So that might help you out on combing just what you want and not accidentally going through the head like mine did. So let's get some of those bangs combed down. Smooth that a little bit. Okay, almost there. Now if you get it combed and you find that it's too close to the head, like he just got out of the swimming pool or went swimming in the lake or the ocean or somewhere, and his hair is wet and stuck to his head, you want to puff it out a little bit. Well, there's a tool just for that, and it's called Puff. So we'll click on that. You can see, just clicking real gently, drag it in there, and it starts kind of just puffing that hair up. Like he went to bed with it wet and woke up with a mad case of bedhead. Then you can kind of fix it back the way you want to. Okay, so we'll get this cleaned up a little bit better. And go back to object mode. And let's go ahead and give him a test render again. Okay, so that's looking a little better. Still haven't messed with the sheen of it, so let's go ahead and grab that. We go back to the material settings. And for adjusting the sheen, I like to just go back to the sphere, turn off the transparency so I can see what I'm doing, and then go to specular and set the intensity down, maybe to about 0.15, and then the hardness, I like to make it a little harder so it's more divided up into the individual hairs rather than just across the whole swatch. So I'm going to set that to, let's say 200. I see that like the very small sheen there, so that should help things. And also, let's go ahead and set the strand, the root, make that a little smaller. Let's make it 1.5 instead of 2.5. And we'll go ahead and turn transparency back on. And just for visual sake, go back to the particle settings there. And now let's go ahead and I guess do a quick test render yet again. And that's looking okay. The hair looks like hair. Not real satisfied with the style of it. Now, one thing we can do to separate this into to left and right, if you want a nice clean part in your hair, like on my let's see, real quick, on my guy, on my CGI self, you can see a nice clean part right there. So the way I did that, it's basically the same thing. I just took that scalp. Let's hide everything except the scalp. There we go. And let's turn this into two separate vertex groups. So we'll go to here, and I'm just going to name this one scalp left. We'll select everything, and then deselect this half of it. Got to turn this limit selection to visible back off. Okay, so select all that, and actually deselect what you don't want. So I want the, see my parts on the left side. Actually, I control the hair according to what I see in the mirror, so that's actually the opposite of what it should be. So this will be his left side, or this will be his right side. So I want to remove this from the left side. So go ahead and remove that. And it doesn't matter that we have the mouth and teeth selected because we're removing it from that. If we were adding it, we definitely don't want that selected, but since we're subtracting, it's fine. So we'll create another one, call this one scalp right, and basically select the inverse, Shift I, Control I, and then make sure now we don't have any of that selected. And now we can say, actually, scalp right, there we go. Now we'll assign those. Okay, so now we have the particle hair is, since we just changed that original one, it's scalp left. I think I just did that. I just did the same thing. I put the vertices on the exact same layer. So let's select everything, deselect scalp right, there we go. And then we'll deselect all the teeth and gums. And then we'll assign this to scalp right. And then select the, not sure what I'm doing here, Control Shift, Control I, and then remove that from there. Okay, so let's see. Scalp right, boom, good to go. Deselect everything, scalp left, boom, there we go. So now we're all set. Okay, so now we just have half the head, so we can comb this nicely. Particle edit, and right now it's showing everything on that side because that was originally what it was. Just go ahead and kill that out and say scalp left. It's only going to render the children on the scalp left, but if you want to just go ahead and start over so you don't see all these extra settings in there, you can. I'm just going to go ahead and keep going with what we got here. Go ahead and create another one. Let's call this one head hair left. I'll come down here. Call this one actually head hair right. And then just duplicate these settings here by going to head hair and then going ahead and come out of particle edit. There's our problem. Go ahead and hit the 2 button there so that separates that. So we'll call this one head hair right. And then head hair left. Go ahead and, we can't change anything unless we hit free edit, and then we'd have to start over. So I'm just going to go back to head hair right, go ahead and set the density to the scalp right, and there we go. So now we'll have a nice part between the two, and we can control each side independently. So back to particle edit, and we'll just go ahead and comb the right side real quick. just so we can get an idea of how that works. And since we duplicated the left side, it'll have all the same settings for the render and the random and the children and all that. The only difference is it lost its styling, its combing. So we just have to get in here and recomb it. No big deal. Just take a little bit extra. And then also, once you do this, you want to make sure, get this combed real quick. Make sure on the back side, where they kind of meet, where the part kind of ends there on the crown, you want to make sure that they kind of blend together nicely. So keep an eye on that as you're combing each side. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and free the edit on that left side. Yes, undo. So just so everything is on there. So we got all the parent particles on the right side, all the parent particles on the left side. So it's not as confusing with all that stuff visible there. Okay, so now you can see we have a nice clean part in the middle, and we'll just have to come back in and modify all the comb all the stuff again. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's going to be all of part 13. I'm going to go ahead and in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and use these tools I just showed you to lengthen and comb and get the hair looking a little bit nicer than we have it here. So by the time we get to part 14, he'll have a nice styled hair. So be ready for a GQ magazine photo shoot or something. So anyways, that's going to be all for part 13. We'll see you in part 14.